Hey, what is up, mortals? It is TCCrew here, and welcome to part 8 of What If Villains Had an Academy. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. And so we begin. Uraka toppled to the ground, clutching the puncture in her shoulder. Before her stood her tormentor, a Nomu constructed from the Shei Hazakai's finest fighter. The limbs sprouting from its back were akin to legs of a spider, and his face was fully obscured by a battered crow's mask. The forearms it sported were strengthened by the life force being drained from the gravitational girl before it, picked up off the ground like a mere plaything, struggling intensely to master her new abilities as her body was being savagely shredded by this Nomu's quirk. Ochako shrieked at the top of her lungs, and in a flash, her wounds closed, and the Nomu before her was reverted to a dogpile of an individual it was forged from. For a moment, the levitating lady could swear the primary Nomu gave her a pained cry for help before being abruptly skewered by All For One's quirk-activating tendrils. Again, muttered the quirk amalgam, sneering and causing the young Nomu before him to screech in pain. Desperately struggling to hold herself together as her opponent's quirk reactivated, attempting yet again to split her apart at an atomic level. With one last cry, a primary roar of defiance, Ochako's body erupted with a flash of magenta-tinged light. She felt her body finally lock into its new abilities, her quirk sliding into place, puzzle pieces finally finding their proper position to fit into a grander image. When finally able to stand again, the naive Nomu took a deep breath, her once navy blue skin now returning to her formal skin tone. Her horn had shifted to the exact middle of her forehead, almost causing an artificial widow's peak. Her hair grew longer, becoming a bright silver color which worked in tandem with her new golden irises. Looking down at her hands, Uraka now felt some form of raw power jolt her system back to life before looking back at her sensei. All For One was beaming ear to ear, grin sinister and hands filled with a small bundle of cash. Perfect. The forced awakening of quirks is something I finally understand, and it was all thanks to you, Ochako Uraka. The rest of the promised money will be coming as long as you stick with us here. This should suffice. Do with it what you will. An equal amount was sent to your parents. With a wild smile filled with malice, All For One stared down at the artificially awoken teen and put his arms behind his back. Grabbing the Nomu which had collapsed due to the orders of its creator, the criminal conglomeration siphoned the might of the beast into himself, and in a moment which made Uraka want to vomit, the eyes and the nose of the beast erupted off of his face. The quirk amalgam laughed maniacally, his face accumulating the blood which traveled in 9 mystical streams to fit his face perfectly. The eyes rolled around unnaturally as their tendons reattached themselves with his head, and the nose cracked sickeningly. While this all went down with a matter of seconds, All For One knelt down until he was face level with Uraka, still holding on to the Nomu's face. With a single clench of his fist, the face of the still breathing behemoth evaporated, reconstructing itself atop of All For One's face. The face of what the leader of the Hazakai was now belonging to All For One, combining the cell activation and overhaul quirks to give himself a pseudo-permanent facelift. His body slowly grew to match the leader's own until he was a nearly perfect copy of Katsuki. The laughing of the madman was enough to drive Ochako up the wall. This is simply flawless! Thanks to that child's forfeit life, I can perfect my craft. And you, my dear Ochako, you are an invaluable asset. Thus, I shall treat you as such. All For One gave Ochako a bow before stepping through a portal, still laughing. Hanging her lucky stars, the gravitational girl let go of the breath she held, before getting sick on the ground. Why? The young girl couldn't stop asking herself this. After all she'd seen, all she'd been through, Why did she go to a place she could never escape? Frustrated, she punched the ground, causing a crack in the asphalt. Tears poured down her face as she wiped her mouth. All at once, she remembered the pain she had felt rush back to her all at once as a large pair of hands wrapped around her throat. She felt her skin beginning to crumble like ashes from a campfire, and she writhed in a furious attempt to keep herself together. Without giving her any leeway, Tomura tightened his grip, which caused the naive Nomu to begin writhing harder, the spread of disintegration getting harder and harder to fight. You make me sick. Why do you have to come here and steal my master away from me? You and your damn quirks. He cares for you as though he never kept me. I'll make sure you're nothing more than dust in the woods before you take the chance to overtake me. Take me to jail, kill me, or leave me here. I have no more reason to live. With that, Shigaraki turned around in an attempt to carry Uraka somewhere more discreet for what followed, but he was stopped by a hand to his forearm. Bursting from a grey portal of sludge, all at once, Tomura dropped the girl, who sputtered and coughed uncontrollably as he felt his abilities leave his body. With one swift motion, All For One tossed his ex-protege aside as he laid a hand on the levitating lass back and healing her fully. Without even fully re-entering the portal, All For One sighed. Take Tomura somewhere far away from here. He's useless to me now. I've got all the strength and leverage I could possibly need. The portal then briskly closed behind him, and with tears in her eyes, Oshako reluctantly dragged the unconscious, quirkless man to a dark alley, the worst part of alleys surrounding her home. Looking back, wishing she could do something to ease the pain this poor fellow would inevitably feel after he would awake, the naive Nomo turned and skulked back to the villain's school, leaving the man whom attempted to murder her atop a pile of garbage bags. When Tomura awoke, he sat upright with a jolt of alertness, suddenly struck with vertigo and the feeling from a massive migraine. The handsy man looked at his hands, which were now covered in garbage and sewage from the place he was left in. In a vain attempt to reject what had just happened, Shigaraki tried to pick up a banana peel and break it down, but nothing happened. Frustrated, he tried again, but to no avail. He squeezed harder and harder until it simply slopped out of his hand, too weak to hold itself together any longer. A tear formed in his eyes. The disintegrating devil kept trying to use his abilities, but every time he was met with further failure. After the 7th attempt on a spoiled loaf of bread, a few drops of rain landed atop his ragged hair. Tomura scratched his face nervously, suddenly pausing and feeling his raw skin tinged with cool hydration brought about by the storm clouds overhead. His hand shook, and the handsy man bit his lower lip to keep from breaking into tears. He was being reminded of his childhood, of his time on the streets all over again, slamming a fist onto the pavement over and over until he couldn't bear the pain. Shigaraki screamed aloud, cries resounding unheard throughout the alleyways he had never traversed before. His despair was palpable, yet nobody remained outside to feel it with him. In the moment, something broke within the villain. His motivation dropped, and his instincts to live were nullified. His mind went blank, and his eyes went dead as he slumped against the alleyways, open-palmed and miserable, looking up lifelessly at the droplets which peppered the buildings around him. Tomura Shigaraki wondered why he had ever trusted All For One to begin with. After being blatantly humiliated at the hands of some ex-convict, Bakugo growled under his breath. How dare she make a scene like that in the damned courtyard of all places? And Deku? What had occurred to make him so much more confident than before? As mad as he was, Katsuki was also pensive. Maybe he had been a bit hasty when judging the pair of them. Whatever anyone else said, the girl was more tame than the clips he had seen of her leaked online. Maybe she was able to move past her past after all. Shaking his head, the Boom King scratched the back of his head agitatedly before shouting out loud, "Damn it, Deku! Why are you and that crazy chick so damn confusing?" This eruption of vocality led to a response from somewhere nearby, and after immediately catching on, Bakugo leapt back in a defensive stance, staring down an alley at the source. In the setting sun and the downpour surrounding him, he could barely make out a humanoid figure, covered in garbage and drenched to the bone. Eyeing him, Katsuki tentatively stepped closer, cautiously. After getting a good look at him, the explosive teen soon recognized the vacant stare. Heck, if he didn't know any better, he'd assumed this mystery man was dead. However, every dozen seconds or so, he heard this husk of a human being shakily wheeze. Unsure of what to do, pride clashing with human decency, the short-tempered student scratched the back of his neck. "You gotta get out of this rain or something," he muttered, looking sidelong at the depressed man laying before him, his head barely moving to face him. Chapped lips unmoving, but eyes lazily noting the existence of the kid before him. Crumbling, Bakugo continued, "You got a home or something? You should go there, it's..." Katsuki took pause as this newcomer slowly shifted back to his original position. Vacant stare looked at the poster before him. Bakugo matched his gaze and saw the wanted poster describing just who the villain before him was. His heartbeat increased, hands sparking violently for a moment. But he took a pause. Comparing the two images, something was clearly wrong with the scene before him. Deciding to make a bold move, the Boom King spoke up. "Hey, if you don't move, I'm gonna drag you to the cops, and they'll put you away, you hear me?" Without another word, Tomura put his hands up before him, limp and inactive, sighing. Katsuki became enraged at this. "You meant to tell me that you, who is wanted for that much money, is willing to just give up? Damn it, I'll kick your ass if you don't tell me what you're doing here! Take some initiative, you damn freak!" After a moment, Shigaraki put his hands back down to his sides, heaving a sigh. Shaking his head and rubbing his face with his hands, he looked up to make eye contact with the explosive teen. "Take me to jail. Kill me. Leave me here. I have no more reason to live. I don't even have any power anymore." As if to prove a point, Tomura lifted the loaf of bread and clenched his fist around it as tight as he could, only squishing the contents of the plastic wrap. "If I had power, this would be a pile of ash by now. It isn't. I have nothing left. Just do whatever." The handsy man returned to his previous position, staring at the poster, now clearly sporting mildly watery eyes. Bakugo was at a loss, shock freezing him in place, weighing his options, seemingly being his best bet at the moment. The Boom King mulled over his choices. If he left this criminal here, he could easily be lying and take innocent lives. If he wasn't lying and he left this criminal here, then he'd still be lying to the authorities. However, if he tried to take him in while he still had his quirk and was just hiding it, he could die or be used as a bargaining chip. The last option, though, rang true within the crackling fighter's gut. Taking him to the police while he had no quirk would not only let him claim a large bounty and bragging rights, but he would get this mopey villain off the streets. "Fine. If you don't care, you won't fight back. And if you do fight back, I'll beat the crap out of you." Bakugo heft Tomura to his feet, guiding him to the police station. After a brisk walk and odd stares, they finally arrived and the explosive teen handed over the convict. After out of earshot and a moment of hesitation, Katsuki acted on impulse and pulled the police chief aside. "Can I come in now and then to make sure he's okay still here?" After glancing at Tomura and seeing his condition, the chief held back a smile and nodded briskly. Tomura sighed, shivering violently in his cell. He knew they'd test him to see if he had a quirk. He didn't care anymore. At least the rain was gone, so he could start recovering from his migraine. Looking at the kid who brought him in here, he felt a brief memory come back to him, a memory of his mother, of an honest person. As brutal as that kid had been in his approach, he still did try to help. Shigaraki sighed. Maybe he'd observe heroes and villains alike from his cell for now, and see how things went. After all, he'd have a show to watch soon. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in the story thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge for all kinds of series, guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We the Celestial Naruto What Ifs. That's what we do on this channel already, but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. Go check it out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, then I would like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being, we only accept members 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interest by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be. Whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits, we're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and have a great day.